So our first speaker for the day is Mr. Piyush Khaitan, FRPSL, FPCI, a leading Indian aerophilatelist and recognized collector, researcher, exhibitor, author, and speaker specializing in Indian airmails. He is also the chairman of the Airmail Society India Foundation and PCI Philatelic Trust, the convener of AMSI PEX, the International Virtual Aerophilatelic and Astrophilatelic Exhibition. To you, Mr. Piyush Khaitan, in fact, who would be speaking on the Indian Red Cross postal message scheme during the World War II.
Yeah, thank you, Varun. So this is about the postal messaging scheme during World War II, being set up in India by the Indian Red Cross Society. I must say that nothing being presented here today is any original research of mine. There are some references which I will provide during the talk where you'll get a lot more information about it. Also that I have referred to city names contemporaneously. So this all happened 1941 to 1945. So Mumbai is Bombay, Kolkata is Calcutta, etc. During this talk, the thread through which this entire talk is woven is the postal messaging scheme. But what I will do is also touch upon the aerial routes that were taken, the different postage rates, the different superscriptions that were required on the mail, a little bit about postal censorship in India during the war. So there'll be various aspects of civilian wartime mail which will be touched upon as well as part of this talk. I would expect to complete this talk in maybe less than 30 minutes. Just see how I can pace myself. Okay, so I've broken the talk up into three parts. Part one is the scheme itself. Part two is on the rates, routes, etc. and superscriptions for the mail. And part three is other services provided during the war by the Indian Red Cross Society. So coming to the postal message scheme, you see here the map of Europe when the Axis powers were at their height around 1943. So the dark purple are the Axis and Axis allied countries. The light purple are Axis occupied countries. The red is the allies and as well as the orange. So part of the Soviet Union, Britain, Egypt, etc. were here. Now, what happened during the war was that postal communication between allied nations and Axis powers were disrupted completely. So if you had a relative in one of those countries, which were either enemy nations or enemy occupied nations, you could not communicate with them postally. So it was during this difficult time that the Red Cross Society came up with a very innovative scheme on how to get basic information across into areas where postal services were disrupted. So a postal notice was issued on the 27th April 1941, which really describes the scheme entirely. The scheme was largely modeled on the British Red Cross scheme, which was started in Britain and then later adopted by the Red Cross in India and in Canada. The notice itself, what it really does is, one is it gives postal validity to this scheme. So this postal notice, the Indian Postal Department recognizes this as a postal service, as a postal messaging service, and it goes on to describe that how you could communicate with enemy and enemy occupied territories, which are listed: Belgium, Czechoslovakia, Danzig, Denmark, Germany, Holland, Italian East Africa, Luxembourg, Norway, Poland, Channel Islands, and occupied France. So how you could get mail across to them. So basically the Red Cross in India had bureaus in the three main presidency cities: Calcutta, Madras, and Bombay. So Calcutta was the capital of the Bengal presidency. Madras and Bombay were the capitals of the Madras and Bombay presidency. So you could get in touch with those bureaus, you could send a message, they would give you a form, you fill up the form, send it to them, and they would, through the Red Cross in Geneva, they would send it to the other countries. If I go back to this map, you'll notice that there are certain countries in white: Sweden, Switzerland, Spain, Portugal, Turkey, Ireland. These were neutral nations. So Switzerland was a neutral nation, and mail services were not disrupted either from the Allies or the Axis powers to Switzerland. So you could write to Red Cross in Switzerland, and they would then forward the message to the corresponding country with whom India did not have postal relations. And then the postal notice again has a lot of instructions on how the messages are to be written, who they are, who is eligible to send messages, what languages you could communicate in, how many words you could put in, certain content that was permitted and a lot of content that was not permitted to be put, and things like that. So this was a very detailed notice that was put out. So this is now the inquiry form. This is the Red Cross inquiry form. It's called Message Form 61. I will draw your attention to the address here. The Red Cross in India, 29 Talkatora Road, New Delhi. So the Red Cross headquarters in India was here in Delhi. Interestingly, it would shift from Delhi to Simla during the summer months and back to Delhi in the cooler period. And this form itself is surprisingly rare. In fact, only 3 such forms have been recorded with an India address. And in fact, there's an earlier article which mentions that no form has been known. So these have been more recent discoveries. In the top portion of the form, the person who's the inquirer, so in this case, Mr. Kullian from Bombay, would type his name and address. And in the lower portion would be the name of the addressee to whom it was addressed. In this case, it has gone to Mrs. Kullian in Guernsey, Channel Islands. This is the only part of Britain which was German occupied during the war. So he wanted to communicate with her. And the reverse, if you see, there is space for the message itself, less than 25 words to be written, and he's written like, pleased to hear from you and things like that. Very, very general kind of communication. You could not write about a lot of, taboo subjects like about the war or when it will end or things like that. So this is the form. You would have to fill up the form and send it to by hand and send it to Red Cross in Bombay. In this case, since the center was in Bombay or Madras or Calcutta, they would type out the same form and fill it up, because this would be very satisfying to the censors that there's no sort of hidden coded messages, etc., which are going. It was the responsibility of the Red Cross to ensure that. They would then send it to the Red Cross in Geneva. From Red Cross Geneva, they would then send it to the corresponding Red Cross in Guernsey, Channel Island, who would then send the form to him. And then there was space provided even for a reply. So I'm sorry, I stand corrected. The original message was in the front, where he says, received sad news, be brave, all well out here, Patricia, 10 months old, Rosemary, 17 months, fondest love, Willie. This was the message. And at the reverse was the space provided for the reply, where the recipient had space to write a 25-word message and send it back. So again, it would go through the same circuitous route from Guernsey to Switzerland, Geneva, from Geneva to the recipient in India. So very often this circuit took about, in this case, for example, it took 280 days from the time Mr. Kullian in Bombay wrote the message till the time he got it back. And there are various date stamps and caches, etc., on this to trace the journey of this form. So this is, in a way, what exactly was the crux of the Red Cross messaging service. Now, for it to work, you had to send You have to buy international reply coupons. So this is a top right. You see the 4 Anna international reply coupon, which would be sent. So 3.5 Anna was the UPU surface rate at that time. You had to add a half Anna, which was the fee the Indian Postal Department took for the printing and issuance of the form. So this was a 4 Anna form, and if when it reached the recipient at the other end or the Red Cross Society in Geneva, they could exchange it at the post office there for Swiss stamps equivalent to the surface letter rate. So that's how the scheme, the international reply coupons would work. So you had to, according to the postal notice, enclose sufficient number of these forms depending on whether you want your message sent by air or by surface for it to reach the other end. And once it reached Geneva, then it would go to Guernsey or any other place for that matter, where it would go in the envelope which you see below me. So you see the envelope at the bottom right, it's got this large window. And if I go back to the form here, if you see the lower portion, if you fold the form in half, the recipient's address will exactly be visible from the window. And along with that would go this paper, which is a set of instructions for the recipient on how they could fill up their reply and send it back to you. So this was, and again, for example, this instruction says you may write up to 25 words on purely personal and family matters on the back, put it in a cover, address it to the Red Cross Society, Geneva. No address or change of address may be given when replying on the back of the enclosed form. When replying, do not mention service matters. Even such remarks as Tom in Army, Jack gone east, etc. will not be passed by censor. Do not mention receipt of radio messages, letters, cards. Do not mention results of enemy action. Do not mention names of towns. Do not suggest corresponding through an intermediary or any means other than through the Red Cross, etc. So a very, very specific set of instructions were there. So now we come to the Red Cross Society in India. So this is the Bombay office, the Red Cross Society Bombay. This was, if you see the pink rectangular cachet at the bottom, it says Red Cross Society Town Hall Compound, Bombay. This is where they were based. And in fact, even to this day, they continue to operate there. The Red Cross office in Bombay and the Red Cross Blood Bank are located there. This was in the compound of the Town Hall of Bombay. This is a beautiful neoclassical building, which is now the Asiatic Society, still stands in Bombay, grand structure. And this is where the Red Cross operated. So here is a cover of 22nd, dated cancelled 22nd April 41 from the Bombay Red Cross. So this is the cover in which forms would be enclosed. So they would put multiple forms, 10, 20 forms in one cover and send it to the IRCC in Geneva. What is interesting about this one is it is actually cancelled 22nd April 1941, the day of the postal notice. So the day the scheme was notified is the day this cover was sent. I do not know whether there would be covers with a date earlier than this from Bombay. We do have one from Calcutta, which we will show you shortly. So probably the scheme was actually in operation a few days even before the postal notice was issued. And the postage, the franking on this cover is 21 Anna 65. 18 Anna was the airmail rate, 3 Anna 65 was the surface letter rate. This is another one, but this is also from Bombay, but now it says Prince of Wales Museum, Fort Bombay. So somewhere a couple of years after the scheme started, they moved offices from the town hall to the Prince of Wales Museum. This Prince of Wales Museum was opened in 1915 and served as a military hospital during World War I, and had the Red Cross offices located here during World War II. Indo-Saracenic structure, beautifully designed and built. Now, this cover says messages for the Far East. So again, to speed up processing at the other end, they would say messages for Europe or messages for Far East. So this is messages for Far East. The registration label says Secretariat Bombay. Now, the Bombay Secretariat used to be in what is now the Magistrates Court building in Bombay. So there are three magnificent neo-Gothic structures in a row opposite the Oval Maidan, starting with the Bombay High Court on the left, the Bombay University complex in the center, with the amazing Senate Hall and the Raja Bai Tar. And next to that is the Secretariat, what used to be now the Magistrates Court. So this is a letter from the Prince of Wales Museum. I must say that Bombay is my favorite city as far as architecture goes. I think the most amazing example of neo-Gothic architecture, Indo-Saracenic, even I would say neoclassical. It's a delight to watch. Now we move on to the Indian Red Cross Society Bengal. So this is a very interesting cover. You see, the sender from Calcutta has addressed it to Mr. Jacques Mock, and he's actually given his postal address in France, which is now blacked out by the blue crayon, and he's written to them care of the International Red Cross Society, Geneva. So the post office in Calcutta obviously saw it addressed to France and put this rectangular cachet, which has also been cancelled out. The cachet reads no service, return to sender, because it appeared to them that this is a cover addressed to France. Fortunately, somebody there discovered the error, so they cancelled out the cachet with the blue crayon. They blocked out the France address with blue crayon so that nobody repeats the error. And the care of Red Cross Geneva, they made it to the Red Cross Geneva. And the cover then got censored in Calcutta and went on to Geneva. We can see the two red bar jusqu'à cancellation there as well. This was applied in London. So obviously the route was from India via London to Geneva. Now, the other interesting thing is this cover is cancelled on 1st April 1941. So it's actually 3 weeks before the issuance of the postal notice. So it's very clear that something was in operation even before the postal notice was issued. We come to the Red Cross Society Madras. These people did something quite ingenious. What they did was, if I'm showing you one cover, the front of one cover, Madras Provincial Branch, and I'm showing you the reverse of 5 different covers, each one is putting the language of communication of the contents. So you've got German and French, you've got English and Belgian, you've got English and French, English and Dutch, English, Italian and Danish. So one is, imagine the so many different languages. We had people from all these countries speaking these languages in Madras at that time. And the reason why they were separated into separate covers was if you put 10 forms of 4 different languages in the same cover, until a translator for all the 4 languages were found, all the contents of that would be held up. So by breaking it up by language, they were able to clear censorship much faster and get the mail across to Geneva much faster. Now, reply coupons. So here is an example of the inquirer being in a foreign country and sending the inquiry form to his relative in India. So there the postal instructions were that now you can reply to the IRCC direct. You don't have to go through the Red Cross Society in India. So this is an airmail cover. It's franked 15 anna 9 pi. And it's taxed 93 centimes because it was understamped by 5 anna 9 pi. The actual postage was 21 and a half annas. So, but there's no evidence here of the postage due being collected. But it's certainly undergone censorship through in the German hands as well as in the British hands. And again, you see and of course the Indian censorship as well. You see the red jusqu'à bars cancelling the airmail etiquette. So this is again an example of a cover that went through via London to Switzerland. The same way, you could also send the reply by surface. So here is somebody who sent the reply by surface mail, franking it only 3.5 anna. These take a long, long time during the war to get across, but that was his choice. Again, the mistake he's made here is he's put the name of the recipient who is in Vienna on the cover and then written care of Red Cross. But obviously, when through, you can see the various censorship marks. The German censorship mark with an X. The X is indicator of Paris, so it went through the German occupied France on its way to Switzerland. Also, very interesting is the received damage postal sensor cachet on the front, and you can see the little brown tape repairs which the postal sensor carried out before sending it. There's a pink coupon réponse cachet on the reverse. This was affixed in Geneva upon receipt, where the Red Cross person opened it and confirmed that there is a UPU coupon inside for them to then forward it to Vienna. There was one more postal scheme actually in operation even before the Red Cross scheme started. So there is a postal notice of January 1941 which talks about the Thomas Cook. So Thomas Cook was operating this scheme out of Lisbon, Portugal, which was another neutral nation, and PO Box 506 was the post box they had opened. So you could actually send messages to PO Box 506 and Thomas Cook would then forward your message to the recipient at the other end. And this is again postally recognized in India. There is a postal notice of January 1941 that I have, which describes the Thomas Cook scheme. What I'm showing here is a cover from France to Lisbon, simply because I have not come across a single cover to or from India connected with Post Box 506 during the war. But this is an arrangement which was also in vogue at that time. Okay, now I'm moving from here to part 2 of my talk, which is really some examples of mail that went through. So again, from a postal history and aerophilately perspective, I find this very interesting. The postal rates from India at that time were that you had to pay the ordinary surface postage, which was 3.5 anna per up to 1 ounce, and air fee. Air fee was largely 18 anna per half ounce. So the routing and superscription kept changing. So 3rd September 39 to September 41 required it to be superscribed India, Italy, which also gives you an idea of the route the letter followed. September 41 to March 44, there was no superscription required, simply because the world by that time was in such disarray that routes would keep changing, and the postal authorities would just use their judgment to send it to you in the fastest possible way. And March 44 to October 45, the superscription was India, Africa. So it would go from India via the Middle East across Africa and then by sea to Portugal or Spain, and then from there to Switzerland. October 45 to September 46, there was a slight increase. The 18 anna air fee was increased to 22 anna, and 3.5 anna letter rate, so 25.5 anna, and it would go via England. So it was India, UK, Switzerland was the superscription. And there was for a brief period from May 41 until Pearl Harbor, December 41, there was a 56 anna rate, India, Chungking, Portugal. So this would actually go from India eastward via CNAC, via Chungking, picked up by Pan Am in Hong Kong. And from there it would go trans-Pacific across the United States by United from San Francisco to New York. And finally, no, it would come down south, sorry, not New York, via Miami. It would come from Miami and then it would go to Lisbon. And then from Lisbon, it would be, there were KLM flights being operated by British Airways, British Overseas Airways, who would take it to London. And then from there, it would go off from Portugal itself, it would go to Switzerland. So these were the different rates and superscriptions that were required. So we will see here an example of the first September 39 to September 41 India-Italy route. You can see the propaganda slogan at the bottom left of the cover, help him defend you, buy defense loans. You also see the coupon réponse cachet which was applied in Geneva, confirming the UPU postal coupon was found inside. Addressed to Red Cross Bureau, Geneva. On the reverse is the pink Red Cross cachet. And this is sent, interestingly, from a person from the British rest camp in Satara. So he then reached out to the Bombay Red Cross and had it sent through to them. So this is during the first period where the route was via Italy. So it would be offloaded at Brindisi, and then from there it would go by surface to Geneva. The second one here, this is again a very interesting cover. It's a registered cover from Calcutta to the Red Cross Society, Switzerland. It's passed through the censor at Bombay, and it's also censored in London. Now, what is very interesting here is this is a crash cover, and if you see the reverse of the cover, you see the label which is used to seal it. Basically, it says this was on the Cairo Karachi dispatch number 65. So this leads me to believe that it was a RAF service which carried this, which crashed somewhere between Karachi and Cairo, and this cover was recovered, but obviously made its way to Geneva because of the coupon repons cachet which is marked up there on the front. So this is franc 24 Anna 6 pi, adding 3 Anna for the registration label, Newmarket, Calcutta. Now we come to the third period, which is March 44 to October 45. And here the route has been beautifully described. If you see here, it says airmail via Baghdad, Cairo, Algiers, Casablanca, Barcelona, and then on to Switzerland. So this is really remarkable to see something like this, and again pass through the German censorship, and you see all the register number and the noting they do on the cover before they release it to be sent to Switzerland. And then this is another example of the March 44, October 45 India-Africa route. This one is very interesting. You see the wax seal at the reverse of the cover. This is the PMS, Postal Messaging Service wax seal of the Indian Red Cross Society, Bombay, that was applied. And this is when they just about moved into the Prince of Wales Museum. So they're still exhausting their Mint Road stationery and typing the new address on top of it. And this is a franc 43.5 Anna. So it's in the second weight stage. So it has 36 Anna air fee. So it was between half ounce to 1 ounce, 3.5 Anna surface letter, and 3 Anna registration. I think it's still overstamped by 1 Anna. This here is the last stage, which is the October 45 till the end of the war. To Switzerland, and again it has gone via London. So the OAT mark, OAT is onward air transmission mark. This was applied only on the cover, which is on top of the bundle. So it's not very often that you see OAT marks on the mail. Was applied in London by the inward section and sent on to Switzerland. You will not see a Jusqua mark cancelling the etiquette here because it did not end its journey in London. It went on to Switzerland by air. And again, franked 23.5 Anna. Goa was a Portuguese colony at that time. So Portugal was a neutral nation. So Italian and German sailors took refuge in Goa, but they were not set free. They were interned up there. So because they were interned, they were treated as civilian internees. They were sailors, not naval. And therefore they got the privileges of a civilian internee. So they could also communicate with their families via the Red Cross Geneva. On the left is a cover from an Italian sailor, and on the right hand side is the one from a German sailor. Addressed to the Red Cross there. The other thing that you'll notice here is on this cover here, you see the octagonal censorship cachet, and it's much more visible on the German cover, past DHG5. So this is a sensor cachet which was used to tie the sensor label to the cover. And DH was the code for India. G was the code for Belgaum. So Belgaum was the office of exchange between Goa and British India, where the mail was handed over to the Indian postal system. So there was a censor office that was set up there, which has censored the letter before sending it on to Switzerland. I will move on from here to some of the other services which the Red Cross provided during the Second World War. So one thing was they needed money, and they printed these charity labels and they sold them to raise some money. You see two examples here. The colors have not come out very well. They actually look pretty much the same. So the two different colors you see here is more my scanner acting up rather than anything else. The difference is the one on the left has a 1 Anna written on it, and the one on the right does not have any value written on it. So the variety 1, which is the left hand side label, was issued in November 41. They used it for about a month, and that too largely sold from Delhi. And very quickly, the postal authorities and the Auditor General took objection that the postal officers could mistake it as a postage stamp, and then the postal department would be deprived of revenue. They were not happy with the printing of the 1 anna value. So that was removed, and then they were in December 1941. The same charity label was introduced without the denomination being mentioned, and that continued till the end of the war in 1945. Government departments were all encouraged to affix these labels on every letter they sent out, where there was a strong pushback that these departments are already contributing in their own way to the war effort and they may not want to spend this money anymore. The Red Cross, International Red Cross itself had a delegation in British India. This was again based at the headquarters, which was Shimla in the summers and Delhi in the rest of the year. So here is a letter from the International Red Cross delegation in India to the IRCC, Geneva. This is again the commissioner of the Red Cross was again moving in. So Simla was the headquarters during the summer months. And here is a letter again to the Agency for the Prisoners of War, not the civilian, but the Prisoner of War department in the IRCC Geneva for forwarding the mail, and certified to be an official letter by the commandant of the Red Cross in India. Here is an interesting cover. If you see on the bottom left, the Red Cross Commissioner address has been blacked out. That is actually the Delhi address of the Red Cross, and then Simla has been handwritten below that, Simla, India, to provide the correct address. It's again a letter to the Prisoner of War Agency in Geneva, and you see the OAT circular cachet here again, indicating that it went again via London to Geneva. And this one was not opened by censor, so you see the cachet at the back. It says B6 here. B was the code for Karachi, so it went by air from Karachi and went on to London. The Red Cross also handled mail for prisoners of war. So here is a cover sent via the Red Cross Society in Geneva to prisoner of war, British prisoner of war in German hands. So it would go to the Red Cross Geneva and they would forward it. The route it took it through Italy, where you see it passed the censor in Italy, and there is a Italian censor label sealing the cover as well. Similarly, here is a cover sent through the to Pegu district in Malaysia in Japanese occupied territory. So again, it had to go through the Japanese Red Cross Tokyo. These took very, very long to reach, and this one unfortunately did not make it. The cachet here is very clear: return to sender, language not allowed. If you remember, when I read out the notice at the beginning, there was a list of approved languages in which communication could be sent out. So this was sent back, did not make it to the intended recipient. The Red Cross Committee also the delegation here corresponded with other Red Cross in different places. I'll go very quickly. So this is one to the Red Cross in Canada. This is one to the Red Cross in Naples, Italy. These are covers to the Information Bureau of the Netherlands Red Cross, but operating out of London for obvious reasons during the war. So it went to them. This is one to the Wounded, Missing and Relatives Department of the Red Cross in London again, which was sent by the Red Cross in India. The Red Cross in India, this is something very interesting. On the left is a cover from the Red Cross Commissioner in Iraq, which was being serviced under the Indian Red Cross. And on the right hand side, my friend Kiran Natarajan was good enough to share this with me just a couple of days ago. This is from the Iraq-Iran branch. So just gives you a sense how wide the influence of the Red Cross was. India is what in those days was what is now including Pakistan and Bangladesh. And here we are seeing operations also in Iraq and Iran. So clearly they had a very, very vast area of operations. This is the Chinese Red Cross. This is a letter addressed to the Chinese Red Cross in Assam. Now, this is during the war. There was a massive Japanese occupation of Manchuria, and there was a war being fought up there. About 1 million Japanese soldiers were occupied fighting that war, and only 1.5 million were there to, for all the other countries they were in. So the Chinese army was being very heavily supported by the Americans. So they would mobilize supplies, ammunition, food, all of that for the Chinese soldiers. They had staging points that were set up in Assam, and they would then fly what was then the most difficult air route in the world over the hump, over the Himalayas, to get to China to drop the supplies. So the Chinese Red Cross was obviously quite active there as well. And here is a cover. I've seen only one like this, and this is the best condition I could get it in, addressed to the Red Cross. So with this, I will come to the end of my talk. Those who are interested, I would recommend two short articles which will be very interesting to you. Thomas Boyle, in his airmail operation during World War II, has described the scheme quite well. And David Trapnell has written an article in India Post, again, which describes the scheme very well. I've drawn heavily on both of these sources for preparing for this talk.
Many thanks for an insightful talk, Mr. Khaitan.